The architecture of cold intellect. A guide to social dominance. Welcome to the reality that you so carefully attempt to ignore. While you believe in goodness, justice, and sincerity, the social predators surrounding you see you only as pliable material, a volume of biological resource that can be converted into their influence. You are either the one who holds the scalpel or the one who lies on the operating table. There is no middle ground. Empathy is a luxury for the weak, which they use as a shield to justify their inability to dominate. I am not here to comfort you. My task is to dissect your delusions and arm you with the tools of cold, calculating intellect. We are moving to the level of biological survival, where neurochemistry is more important than morality, and the Nietzschean will to power is the only true law. If you are ready to admit that your security is an illusion, we shall begin. Chapter 1. The Vacuum of Reaction. The Art of Controlled Silence 1. Phase. The Encounter. Narrative. An evening at the home of mutual acquaintances. 6 people are at the table, including Ethan and Liam. The air is saturated with the scent of expensive perfume and aged wine, but beneath this shell of civilization pulses a primal tension. Liam, a man with a wide smile and eyes as cold as those of a reptile, takes a sip and glances around those present. He has chosen his moment. The silence between the change of courses is the ideal time for a social bite. Ethan. Liam's voice sounds intentionally friendly, yet the whistle of a whip is audible within it. I heard you failed that real estate deal again. Is this the 3rd time this year? Listen, perhaps you should admit that strategies in large sums are simply not your thing. Subtext. I am publicly marking you as a failure and testing your threshold of submission. Resist so that I may portray you as hysterical, or agree so that I may devour you. A heavy pause hangs in the room. Sarah stops swirling her glass. Her breath hitches. She waits for either excuses or retaliatory aggression. All eyes are fixed on Ethan. Ethan's internal monologue. The heart makes an extra thud. Cortisol has entered the blood. The animal instinct demands either to strike him in the jaw or to start explaining the reasons for the failure. But I know. An explanation is a form of submission. An excuse is an acknowledgement of his right to judge me. I will not give him this nourishment. Ethan slowly shifts his gaze to Liam. He does not change his facial expression. No anger, no resentment, no smile. He looks at Liam as if the man were a spot on the wallpaper, not even deserving of irritation. 3 seconds pass. 5. 10. The silence becomes palpable. It begins to press against Liam's eardrums. Liam's smile begins to crack at the edges. His eyelid twitches imperceptibly. He expected a reaction, but he received a void. In this void, his own insult looks foolish and inappropriate. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. What Ethan did is called creating an information vacuum. In a social hierarchy, the one who asks a question or issues a challenge expects to receive an emotional response. Emotion is currency. When you react, get angry, make excuses, laugh in response, you acknowledge the significance of the aggressor. The mechanism of cognitive suppression. When Ethan remains silent, Liam's brain falls into the trap of uncertainty. In neurochemistry, this causes a sharp spike in norepinephrine. The aggressor does not understand. Was he not heard? Is he despised? Or is Ethan so confident in himself that he does not even find it necessary to respond? The absence of feedback is the most terrible blow to the manipulator's dopamine system. He did not receive the reward in the form of your embarrassment. Ethology. In the animal world, A fixed, motionless gaze without signs of fear is a signal of the highest level of threat. Liam attacked as a social predator, but encountered something he cannot classify. His biological computer produces an error. The fight or flight response is now activated in Liam himself, because Ethan has become unpredictable. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. Real example. Recall the famous Solomon Asch experiment on conformity. A subject was placed in a group of Confederates who unanimously gave incorrect answers to simple questions about the length of lines. In most cases, the individual yielded to group pressure and also answered incorrectly, merely to avoid being a white crow. However, there was one nuance. If even one dissident appeared among the Confederates who simply remained silent or gave the correct answer, the group pressure on the subject decreased by 80%. In the situation with Ethan and Liam, Liam attempts to create a group reality where Ethan is a non-entity. But Ethan, through his silence, destroys this reality. He refuses to validate Liam's rules of the game. Just as in the Asch experiment, one person maintaining autonomy of perception makes the entire aggressive system powerless. Liam counted on social proof of his power through Ethan's humiliation, but he received isolation instead. 4. Phase, the counterstrike. The lesson. When Liam, unable to withstand the pressure of the silence he created, begins to nervously add, "Well, I was just joking, buddy. Do not take it to heart." Ethan delivers the final blow. He does not accept the apology. He merely raises an eyebrow slightly and shifts his gaze to Sarah, asking about something completely neutral. Lesson number 1. Become a black hole for the emotions of others. Never defend yourself. Defense is an admission of guilt. If you are attacked verbally, use the 5-second rule. Look the person in the eyes without any expression. Your task is to make the aggressor feel discomfort from their own voice. Remember, the will to power begins with control over your own micro-reactions. Whoever is the first to avert their eyes or start speaking has lost. 5. Phase, sensory immersion. The air in the room feels cold, almost crystallized. The sound of the ticking clock in the corner of the living room turns into hammer blows, counting down the seconds of Liam's shame. Ethan feels the smoothness of the porcelain plate under his fingers. Cold, hard, unchanging. He is this porcelain. Liam is merely a fly beating against the glass. The shadow from the chandelier falls on Ethan's face, hiding his eyes in deep wells, from which the abyss itself looks at Liam. Chapter 2. The Trap of False Vulnerability. The art of controlled leakage strength is not always a steel gaze and clenched jaws. Sometimes true power lies in the ability to imitate a crack in your own armor. Fools put their invulnerability on display, thereby turning themselves into a target that everyone wants to hit. A true strategist creates the false target himself. We are moving to the stage where yourself becomes the bait. If you are not ready to get your hands dirty in the mud of feigned weakness, to tear out the heart of your opponent, close this file. This is no place for the proud. This is a place for the survivors. 1. Phase, the encounter. Narrative. A private closed club. Semi-darkness, the smell of expensive tobacco and old leather. Oliver sits in a deep armchair, his shoulders slightly slumped, his fingers nervously tapping the stem of a whiskey glass. He looks broken. Thomas, a man accustomed to dominating through soft but suffocating guardianship, approaches. He smells blood, the metaphorical blood of another's failure. Thomas sits down opposite him. His posture is relaxed. He is a predator who has found a wounded animal. Oliver, old man, you are not yourself today. Thomas's voice oozes fake sympathy. I heard about your family troubles. It is terrible. If you need, well, you understand, to pour your heart out or some kind of support on the board of directors. Subtext. I see your weakness. Open up to me, give me compromising material, and I will become your master under the guise of your savior. Oliver raises his eyes. In them is a carefully rehearsed glint of panic. He takes a sip. His hand trembles slightly. It is more complicated than I thought, Thomas. I fear that if this becomes public, I will lose control over the fund's assets. Subtext. I am giving you exactly the information you want to use against me. Swallow the hook. Oliver's internal monologue. My pulse is 65 beats per minute. Cold calculation. I see his pupils dilating. A dopamine surge. He is already celebrating victory. He thinks he has found my Achilles heel, but in reality, he is entering a room where I have already set the traps. Every word of mine is a false trail. I am forcing him to invest his resources in attacking a ghost. Thomas leans closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. He begins to give advice that actually leads to Oliver's isolation. He reveals his true intentions, thinking that Oliver is too crushed to analyze. 2. Phase, psychological X-ray, analysis. Oliver uses the technique of a tactical empathic trap. Mechanism of attack. Manipulators like Thomas possess predictive intelligence. They seek weak spots to consolidate their superiority. When you demonstrate perfect stability, they become cautious and secretive. But as soon as you imitate a breakdown, their vigilance shuts off. They experience what is called the winner's triumph in ethology. Terminology. Reactive management. You force the opponent to act based on false data that you have fed them. Cortisol blinding. When a predator sees a victim in a state of stress, his own brain produces a cocktail of testosterone and dopamine, which reduces critical thinking. Thomas is not analyzing the situation now. He is enjoying his superiority. Physiology. Oliver controls his facial expressions through the suppression of the facial nerves responsible for genuine emotions, imitating only external signs. Trembling, a shifting gaze. This requires a colossal level of emotional intelligence. You must feel another's intention with your skin while remaining absolutely cold inside. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. Real example. There is a classic psychological phenomenon known as the pratfall effect, discovered by social psychologist Elliot Aronson. In his experiment, people rated a competent person higher if he made a small, clumsy mistake, for example, spilling coffee on himself. The mistake made him human and less threatening. In the world of cold psychology, this effect is perverted. We use it not to be liked, but to lull vigilance. In the history of intelligence, this is called legendizing weakness. If the opponent believes you have made a pratfall or have a shameful secret, he stops looking for your real plans. He focuses on this fake crack, wasting all his resources on it. Like the participants in Aronson's experiment, Thomas feels more comfortable next to the erring Oliver. This is the comfort of an executioner who is certain that the victim will not offer resistance. 4. Phase. The counter-strike. The lesson. At the end of the evening, Oliver accidentally leaves a note on the table with the name of a lawyer who is allegedly handling his problem. Thomas immediately photographs it as soon as Oliver steps away. Thomas is certain that he now holds Oliver by the throat. In reality, this lawyer is a longtime partner of Oliver, whose task is to document Thomas's attempt at blackmail or illegal interference. Lesson number 2. Your weakness must be your most guarded secret, which you accidentally allow to be discovered. Never be transparent. If you are strong, appear tired. If you are planning a takeover, appear confused. Allow the enemy to compose a plan for your liquidation based on your false data. When he strikes, he will find he is hitting a void, while your hand is already tightening around his neck. 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. It becomes stuffy in the club. Cigar smoke twists into spirals resembling snakes slowly tightening their coils. Oliver feels the weight of his jacket. It is like armor hiding his icy calm. The clinking of ice in Thomas's glass sounds to Oliver like a countdown. The environment presses in. Low ceilings, burgundy wallpaper that seems soaked with the secrets of past victims. No, Oliver is not a victim. He is the director of this play, and the scenery obeys him. Chapter 3. The Architecture of Doubt. Radical Pragmatism and the Deconstruction of Reality. You are beginning to understand that the world is not a set of facts, but a collection of interpretations. Whoever imposes their interpretation owns the reality of the other. Morality is merely a leash that the weak put on the strong so that the latter do not tear them apart. But we are not here to follow the rules of the herd. We are here to dictate those rules. The next stage is the deconstruction of another's perception. We move to the most dangerous tool in the arsenal of cold intellect, depriving the opponent of a foundation in truth. 1. Phase. The encounter. Narrative. An office of glass and steel. The 22nd floor. Outside the window is a gray metropolis, suffocating in smog. In the meeting room are two. Ava, a senior analyst with a face of cold marble, and Grace, her ambitious subordinate, who has begun to allow herself too much. For example, having her own opinion at board meetings. Ava slowly flips through Grace's report. The silence in the room almost physically presses on the shoulders. Only the steady hum of the air conditioner is heard. Grace. Ava does not raise her eyes. Her voice is quiet, devoid of intonation. Why are the edits on risks that we agreed upon yesterday at 4 o'clock missing from the final document? Subtext. I am inventing an event that did not happen to test your memory and readiness to submit to my authority. Grace freezes. Her eyebrows momentarily move upward. But, Ava, yesterday at 4 we did not discuss risks. You were in a meeting with the lawyers, and I was working on the charts. Subtext. I am trying to protect my reality with facts that I believe to be true. Ava finally raises her gaze. There is no anger in her eyes. There is only a deep, almost sincere disappointment. She makes a long pause, looking Grace directly in the bridge of the nose. Is that so? Ava shakes her head almost imperceptibly. Grace, this is already the second time this week that you have forgotten key details of our briefings. You look pale. Perhaps overwork is taking a toll on your perception. Subtext. I am not arguing with your facts. I am attacking your ability to perceive those facts. I am instilling in you the idea that you are mentally unstable. Ava's internal monologue. She is beginning to doubt. I see it by the way she averted her eyes and started shuffling the pages. Her brain is feverishly searching for confirmation of yesterday. But my authority and this icy confidence create interference. Now I will poison her confidence completely. Fine. Ava closes the folder with a sharp sound. Redo everything by evening. And, Grace, if I were you, I would see a doctor. Such disorientation at your age is a bad symptom. Subtext. I am concluding the attack, leaving you in a state of cognitive chaos. Now you will be afraid to argue with me because you do not trust yourself. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. Ava applied radical pragmatism combined with methodical gaslighting. For her, truth has no meaning. What matters is only whose scenario will be taken as the basis. Mechanism of attack. When Grace presents facts, she was busy with charts. Ava performs a shift of focus. She does not argue about the time of the meeting. She transfers the attack to Grace's personality, to her health and competence. This causes cognitive dissonance. Grace knows the meeting did not happen, but social pressure and Ava's confidence force her brain to seek justifications. Maybe I really forgot. Maybe we spoke in the hallway. Physiology. At the moment of such an attack, the victim's dopamine level drops sharply, loss of control, and the cortisol level spikes. Grace's brain enters an energy-saving mode where critical thinking is turned off in favor of adaptation. She agrees with Ava's reality to stop the stress. Terminology. Erosion of confidence. The gradual destruction of the object's self-identity through false suggestions. Information poisoning. The introduction of false memories or interpretations into the general fabric of communication. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. Real example. Let us turn to the work of Elizabeth Loftus, a leading expert in the field of memory psychology. In her famous Lost in the Mall experiment, participants were fed false memories that, in childhood, they had been lost in a shopping center and rescued by an elderly person. After some time, 25% of the subjects not only remembered this incident, but also supplemented it with invented details. Loftus proved, human memory is not a videotape, but a Wikipedia page that can be edited by anyone who possesses sufficient persistence and authority. Ava does the same. She edits Grace's memory in real time, creating the power hierarchy she needs. According to Nietzsche, there are no facts, only interpretations. Ava lives by this principle, using lies as a tool for shaping the future. 4. Phase. The counter-strike. The lesson. Ava achieved her goal. Grace left suppressed, and her potential rebellion was strangled in its infancy. Lesson number 3. Own the definition of reality. Never enter an argument on the field of facts if the opponent is stronger on it. Move to the field of their perception. Use phrases. Are you sure you remember that correctly? Your interpretation sounds too emotional. Again, you are confusing everything. Your goal is not to prove you are right, but to make the other doubt their sanity. Remember, a person who doubts themselves is clay in your hands. 5. Phase was sensory immersion. The office smells of ozone, an expensive antiseptic. The light of the lamps reflects in the glossy table, creating the illusion of bottomless black water. Grace feels her palms become wet and the air too thick to breathe. Ava, however, feels only the pleasant coolness of the air conditioner. The environment here is her ally. Glass, steel, silence. All this emphasizes her surgical precision and invulnerability. She's not just sitting in an office. She is at the center of a web where every vibration of the victim's fear delivers her pure, intellectual information about victory. Chapter 4. Social castration. The art of controlled isolation and security is not a fence around your house. It is a network of social ties that maintains your psyche in a state of equilibrium. But what will happen if I cut these threads one by one? You will turn into a social ghost, screaming into the void that I myself created. In this state, a person is ready to give anything for a crumb of attention. And then I will become the only source of light in this darkness for you. We move to the section where we learn to break not the will, but the very ground beneath the feet. Welcome to the world of social surgery. 1. Phase. The encounter. Narrative. An evening at a country club. The terrace, bathed in the soft light of lanterns, smells of rain and expensive tobacco. A group of friends laughs at a joke that Lucas has just told. At the center of attention is Chloe, a bright, confident girl accustomed to being the life of the party. Mason stands a bit to the side, leaning against the railing. He does not participate in the general fun. He observes the rhythm of the group. His target is not Chloe, but her connection to the group. He chooses the moment when Lucas falls silent. "Listen," Mason says quietly, addressing everyone except Chloe. "Do you remember that time last year when we all went to the mountains? It seems that was the only time we were truly honest with each other. It is a pity that some of us were not with us then." Subtext. I am reminding the group of their shared exclusive experience, from which Chloe is excluded. I am drawing a line between us and her. The group falls silent for a moment, immersing themselves in shared memories. Chloe smiles, trying to wedge herself in. "Oh, I heard about that trip. That was when..." Mason softly but decisively interrupts her, not looking at her, but addressing Lucas. "Lucas, you remember that story about the guide, do you not? Tell it again." Subtext. Your opinion, Chloe, does not matter right now. I am handing the right to speak to the one who confirms my hierarchy. During the next hour, Mason exquisitely uses triangulation. He winks at Lucas, whispers with other friends about something personal, and when Chloe tries to say something, he either does not notice her words or responds briefly and dryly, immediately switching attention to someone else. Mason's internal monologue. I see her shoulders tightening. She begins to adjust her hair more often, a sign of anxiety. She feels the social fabric tearing. My task is to make her invisible within her own circle of communication. She must feel the cold of loneliness in a crowd of her friends. When her confidence turns into panic, she will come to me herself for confirmation of her significance. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. Mason uses a strategy of social displacement through the mechanism of triangulation. Mechanism of attack. Man is a deeply social being. Our survival for millions of years depended on whether the group accepted us or not. When Mason ignores Chloe and simultaneously emphasizes closeness with the others, Chloe's brain perceives this as a biological threat. Physiology. At this moment, the dorsal part of the anterior cingulate cortex, DACC, is activated in the brain. This is the same part of the brain responsible for processing physical pain. Social rejection is literally felt by the organism as a physical blow. Neurochemistry. Chloe's oxytocin level, the hormone of social attachment, drops while her cortisol level skyrockets. She enters a state of social hunger. In this state, critical thinking is turned off. The victim is ready for any concessions and any change in her behavior, just to restore the connection with the group or receive approval from the one who controls this connection. In this case, Mason. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. Real example. One of the most powerful proofs of this mechanism is the cyberball experiment developed by Kipling Williams. The essence is simple. The subject plays a computer ball game with two other players, who are actually a program. At first, the ball is thrown to everyone equally. No, then, the two virtual players begin to throw the ball only to each other, completely ignoring the subject. The results were shocking. even knowing that it was just a computer game and the people in it were not real. The subjects experienced a deep sense of resentment, anger, and a drop in self-esteem. MRI scans showed that same activation of physical pain zones. Mason does to Chloe in real life exactly what the program did in Cyberball. He deprives her of the ball of social interaction. 4. Phase, the counter-strike. The lesson. After a couple of hours, when Chloe feels absolutely redundant and suppressed, Mason suddenly changes tactics. He approaches her when the others are distracted and gently takes her by the hand. "Chloe, you look a bit upset. Shall we step away and talk? I noticed that the guys are acting somewhat strange toward you today." Subtext. I first created your isolation, and now I offer myself as your only ally and savior. Lesson number 4. Monopolize significance. To become the center of someone's universe, you must first destroy other satellites. Use subtle hints, ignoring, and triangulation to make a person feel isolated. When they reach the bottom of their social loneliness, be the one who extends a hand. They will be grateful to you for saving them from the pain that you yourself caused. This is the foundation of emotional dependency. 5. Phase, sensory immersion. The night grows deeper. The sounds of laughter behind Chloe's back seem distant to her, as if she were under a thick layer of water. She sees her friend's lips moving, but does not hear the meaning of their words. The air feels icy despite it being summer. The only warm spot in this gray world is Mason's hand on her shoulder. His fingers seem like a lifebuoy to her. She does not notice how the walls of the club turn into the bars of a cage that he has built around her. Mason feels the rhythm of her breathing, intermittent, ragged. He knows. Now she belongs to him. Chapter 5. The dictatorship of anticipation. The will to power. Through the vacuum. Your patience is not a virtue. It is disciplined rage, cloaked in the form of immobility. Most people are pathologically afraid of the void. They strive to fill every second with noise, words, and actions, so as not to hear the hum of their own insignificance. A true predator uses this fear to turn silence into a noose. We are approaching the peak of strategy, when your inaction becomes more destructive than any strike. 1. Phase, the encounter. Narrative. A penthouse in the city center. Panoramic windows reflect the lights of nocturnal London. Inside is sterile minimalism, white marble, chrome steel, cold light. James sits at a massive table, his hands resting calmly on the surface. Opposite him is Robert, a business partner whose greed has begun to outweigh his caution. Robert is on edge. He has just issued an ultimatum demanding a redistribution of shares in the project, threatening to derail the deal. He speaks a lot, fast. His gestures are excessive. You surely realize, James, that without my involvement, this fund will not last a month. I want 40%, or I am out of the game right now. What do you say? Subtext. I am terrified of my own audacity and am trying to intimidate you before my adrenaline runs out. James does not answer. He does not even blink. He looks at Robert, but not at his face, but slightly above, at the point between the eyebrows. This creates the sensation of a dominating X-ray gaze. 30 seconds pass. Robert begins to adjust his tie. The sound of his shoe tapping almost imperceptibly on the floor is audible. A minute passes. A silence settles in the room, so profound that it seems as if the movement of blood in the veins can be heard. James's internal monologue. He has already lost. His biology demands an answer from me, a shout, a refusal, an agreement. Any signal that will allow his brain to complete the cycle of tension. But I will not give him this release. I am creating an information vacuum. In this void, his fear of uncertainty begins to devour his confidence. He sees in my silence not weakness, but a hidden threat that he himself invents. Robert cannot withstand it. His voice cracks. Well, why are you silent? Do you have something to say, or do you agree? Subtext. Please say at least something. This silence is killing me. I am losing control over reality. James slowly tilts his head to the side. Robert. His voice sounds frighteningly calm. You look very impatient right now. This is a bad sign for a serious player. Are you sure you want to continue this conversation in such a tone? 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. James uses the information vacuum as a tool for realizing the Nietzschean will to power. Mechanism of attack. Nietzsche argued that life is a striving for the expansion of influence. When Robert attacks, he is trying to expand his influence. James, instead of clashing with him head-on, simply disappears as an object of reaction. He becomes a mirror in which Robert sees his own insecurity. Physiology. Robert's amygdala is activated. The lack of feedback from James is interpreted by Robert's brain as an invisible threat. This triggers a cascade reaction. The release of adrenaline demands action, but there is nothing to act upon. As a result, a short circuit of the psyche occurs. Robert begins to make micro-errors. Fussing, sweating, changing the terms of the deal in James's favor, just to end this torture of silence. Terminology. Cognitive exhaustion. The opponent spends all mental resources trying to decipher your silence. Feedback deprivation. Depriving the object of social validation, which leads to rapid degradation of their position. 3. Phase. Psychological precedent. Real example. Let us turn to the still face experiment conducted by Edward Tronick. Originally, it was conducted on infants. A mother first actively interacted with the child, and then suddenly made her face absolutely motionless and devoid of emotions. The results were frightening. In a matter of seconds, the child went through stages from attempts to attract attention to panic and a total psychological collapse. In the world of adults, such as James and Robert, this mechanism works identically. Adults are merely children in expensive suits. When you remove the face and stop reacting, you plunge the opponent into a primal horror of abandonment and unpredictability. James uses this biological pattern to turn an aggressive partner into a helpless supplicant. His silence is a psychological castration of Robert's will. 4. Phase. The counter-strike. The lesson. When Robert, finally broken by the silence, begins to offer compromise options, James makes the final move. He does not take 40%. He takes everything. Robert, he says, standing up, from this moment on, your share is reduced to 10, and you will say thank you, because the alternative will be your complete exclusion from the list of living players in this market. My lawyer will send the documents tomorrow. You are dismissed. Lesson number 5. Whoever owns the pause owns the world. Never hurry to fill the silence. Silence is the space where your enemy's fear grows. If you are provoked, if answers are demanded of you, or if they try to corner you, fall silent. Look at the person as if you are studying an insect under a microscope. Remember, your will to power manifests not in loud words, but in the ability to remain motionless when everything around you demands your reaction. 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. In the penthouse, the hum of the city itself becomes audible, a low-frequency vibration that permeates the bones. James feels the cold of the polished stone under his palms. The air here is thin and clean, as if on a mountain peak where only those with ice in their lungs survive. Robert looks small and out of place in this space of geometry and power. The shadow from the massive table falls between them like an insurmountable abyss. James is the very steel of the building, unshakable and indifferent to the wind. Chapter 6. Scripted Capture. The Biology of Injected Triumph. You have approached the line where manipulation ceases to be a tool and becomes the art of the architecture of others' destinies. Most people desperately want to believe that they are the authors of their decisions. This is their main vulnerability. If you command a person to do something, you will meet the resistance of their ego. But if you make them believe that your goal is their brilliant idea, they will make any sacrifices to bring it to life. Welcome to the mechanics of scripted capture. Here we learn not to push people, but to build a corridor for them from which there is only one exit, the one you need. 1. Phase. The encounter. Narrative. A private library, bathed in the amber light of lamps with green shades, the smell of old paper and expensive wax. William, a man whose influence in political circles is felt like invisible gravity, sits in an armchair, studying a map of antique routes. Opposite him is Sophia, an ambitious and predatory woman seeking control over a media holding. William needs Sophia to launch an aggressive attack on a mutual competitor, but in such a way that William himself remains in the shadows. He knows, if he asks her for this, she will demand too high a price. He must make her invent this plan herself. Sophia. William speaks slowly, not looking up from the map. I admire your intuition, but sometimes it seems to me that you are too cautious for your scale. Your potential for market capture is enormous, but... He pauses, sighing almost imperceptibly. Perhaps the time has not yet come. Subtext. I am challenging your self-esteem. I am doubting your strength so that you will want to prove it. Sophia leans forward, her eyes narrow. Cautious? You believe I am missing an opportunity, William? William sets the map aside. He looks at her with a slight touch of doubt, which wounds her ego more than a direct insult. I was just analyzing the positions of our mutual friend on the board of directors. There is a weak point there related to a data leak. But that requires a level of ruthlessness that is rarely found in people of your circle. Forget it. Let us rather discuss the auction on Saturday. Subtext. I showed you a weapon and immediately hid it, saying you do not know how to use it. Now you will do everything to take it from me and apply it. William's internal monologue. The hook is swallowed. I see her nostrils dilating, a sign of activation of the sympathetic nervous system. She is no longer listening about the auction. Her brain is feverishly processing the information about the leak. She will now build the attack strategy herself, supplement it with her own details, and consider it her own brilliant epiphany. She will become my icebreaker, thinking she is the captain of her own fleet. 2. Phase. Psychological X-ray. Analysis. What William did is called priming, in combination with the technique of scripted capture. Mechanism of attack. William does not give instructions. He implants a seed of information in the context of doubt in the victim's abilities. This forces Sophia to strive for compensation. To prove her ruthlessness, she must implement exactly the scenario he planted for her. Terminology. Illusion of authorship. A psychological state in which the subject appropriates an idea suggested from the outside if it was presented through indirect hints. Reactive resistance. A psychological phenomenon in which a direct order causes a desire to do the opposite. William bypasses this resistance by acting through negative reinforcement. Doubt in strength. Physiology. Sophia's prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning, is activated, but under heavy pressure from the limbic system. Emotional response to William's challenge. Her brain begins to produce norepinephrine, demanding immediate action to restore social status. When she finds the solution, which William planted, the brain rewards her with a massive release of dopamine. She falls in love with this idea because it saves her from a sense of inferiority. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. Real example. In social psychology, this phenomenon is closely related to the so-called IKEA effect, studied by Michael Norton, Daniel Mochon, and Dan Ariely. Its essence is that people disproportionately value products in the creation of which they participated. In the experiment, people were willing to pay more for IKEA furniture they assembled themselves than for exactly the same furniture assembled by professionals. They considered it better and smarter only because they had invested their own labor into it. William uses this effect in the sphere of strategy. He forces Sophia to assemble the attack plan according to his blueprints. Since she will spend intellectual effort on its refinement, she will defend this plan as her brainchild. For her, this plan will become the best in the world, and she will not notice that she is merely performing the dirty work for William. She is a slave who is proud of how well he forges his own chains. 4. Phase, the counterstrike. The lesson. Half an hour later, Sophia herself describes to William the details of the attack on the competitor. She is excited. Her voice sounds authoritative. "I will do it through their branch in Singapore, William. It will be my triumph. You will see which of us is too cautious." William smiles almost imperceptibly with the corner of his mouth. "Perhaps you're right, Sophia. That sounds bold. We shall see if you have the spirit to see it through to the end." Lesson number 6. Never be the owner of an idea. Be its architect. If you want someone to perform a dangerous act for you, do not ask them for it. Question their ability to perform it and drop fragments of the plan to them. Allow their vanity to connect these fragments into a single picture. A person who considers themselves the author of a plan will show 10 times more zeal and cruelty than one who simply follows an order. The will to power is the ability to force another's will to work for your interests while maintaining the victim's illusion of freedom. 5. Phase, sensory immersion. The library becomes cool. Shadows from the bookshelves fall on the floor like long black fingers, squeezing the space. William feels the smoothness of the leather binding of an old book. It is as pliable as Sophia's psyche at this moment. The lamplight catches only part of his face, leaving his eyes in deep shadow. Sophia sees in him only a mirror of her ambitious reflection, not noticing that behind this mirror is a void and cold calculation. The silence of the library is now not just an absence of sound. It is a vacuum that Sophia hurries to fill with her noise, her plan, her destiny, which William has just rewritten. Chapter 7. Total deconstruction. The sovereignty of the void. We have reached the finale. If you have mastered the previous lessons, you no longer look at the world as a place for communication. Now you see it as a complex architectural system of force vectors, where every person is either a point of support or a redundant element subject to dismantling. The last stage is not just a tactic. It is a state of being. It is the moment when you completely separate your personality from social expectations and become what Nietzsche called a self-rolling wheel. You no longer react to reality. You are reality. 1. Phase, the encounter. Narrative. Dawn over the financial district. Glass towers pierce the morning mist like blades. On the roof of a closed helicopter club stand two, Arthur and Julian. Julian is breathing heavily. His expensive tie is loosened. On his face is a mixture of triumph and horror. He has just completed the takeover of a competitor company using a scheme that Arthur suggested to him in Chapter 6. Julian feels like the king of the world, but in the depths of his pupils pulses an awareness. He has crossed the line of the law. "We did it, Arthur." Julian laughs, but his laughter sounds cracked. "Now we are at the top. But those documents in Singapore, if they surface, I will go to prison for 20 years. You did destroy the tracks, as you promised, did you not?" Subtext: I gave you my life in exchange for this success. Tell me I am safe. Give me confirmation of my significance. Arthur stands at the very edge of the roof. The wind flutters the tails of his long black coat, but he himself is motionless, like a statue. He slowly turns to Julian. In his eyes there is no joy, no warmth, not even complicity. Only the cold glint of pure reason. "We, Julian?" Arthur pronounces the word as if tasting something unpleasant. "In this deal, there is no us. There is your name on the contracts, your signature under the transfers, and your desire for power which blinded you." Subtext: I am completely cutting you off from my protection. You are the sole bearer of responsibility. I am merely an observer who is officially never here. Julian pales. His world begins to crumble. The silence on the roof becomes ringing. Only the hum of the wind in the structures. Arthur's internal monologue. Here it is, the moment of truth. Biological collapse. His cortisol is off the charts. Blood is draining from the brain to the muscles, but there is nowhere to run. He seeks humanity, empathy, a shared history in me. But I am a vacuum. I have deconstructed his personality to the level of a function. He performed his task. He eliminated the competitor. Now he is ballast. My will to power demands his disposal so that I can occupy the cleared space. But you yourself gave me instructions, Julian shouts, taking a step toward Arthur. Subtext: I am trying to bring you back into the field of moral responsibility. You cannot just leave. Arthur looks at him with a light, almost scientific interest. Evidence, Julian. Do you have even one word written by my hand? Even one recording? No. You built this scenario yourself. You yourself wanted to be ruthless. I merely allowed you to become who you truly are, a greedy and incautious amateur. Subtext: I am destroying your last illusion, the illusion that you were a player. You were a pawn that imagined itself a queen. 2. Phase: Psychological X-ray analysis. Arthur applies total deconstruction of the social tie. Mechanism of attack. This is the highest form of psychological sovereignty. Arthur uses radical pragmatism, completely denying the existence of loyalty, friendship, or shared guilt. He moves Julian into a state of existential shock. Terminology. Diffusion of responsibility, reversed. Usually, people divide guilt among everyone. Arthur performs a concentration of responsibility on a single victim, completely washing his presence out of the situation. Psychological annihilation, the total destruction of the opponent's identity. Julian is no longer a successful businessman. He is a failure who is going to prison. Physiology. Julian enters a state of tonic immobility, freeze response. When the brain realizes that neither fight nor flight will save him, Arthur is invulnerable, the law is near. The amygdala shuts down higher cognitive functions. Julian can only stand and watch as his life disintegrates into atoms. His prefrontal cortex is paralyzed. 3. Phase, psychological precedent. Real example. Recall the infamous Stanley Milgram experiment on obedience to authority. Subjects, teachers, gave electric shocks to learners, actors, only because a man in a white coat said, "The experiment requires that you continue." Milgram's main discovery was not that people are cruel, but that they move into an agentic state. In this state, a person ceases to consider themselves responsible for their actions, shifting the blame to the authority. Arthur is a genius of this mechanism. He allowed Julian to enter an agentic state in Chapter 6, when Julian thought he was executing Arthur's brilliant plan. But now, in Chapter 7, Arthur suddenly severs this connection. He says, "I am not your authority. You did everything yourself." This causes an instantaneous psychic breakdown in Julian, because the entire weight of the electric shocks, crimes, suddenly collapses onto his own conscience and legal responsibility. He is deprived of the psychological refuge that submission provides. 4. Phase, the counterstrike. The lesson. Arthur turns and walks toward the exit from the roof, not even looking back. His steps sound confident and clear on the concrete. "Goodbye, Julian. Try not to cry too much during the interrogations. It ruins the image that you built so diligently." Lesson number 7. Become a ghost in your own system. Never leave emotional or documentary traces of your influence. Real power is when you change the world with others' hands, while remaining absolutely clean in the eyes of the law and society. If a project is successful, allow others to bask in the rays of glory. They will become your debtors. If a project fails, you should have nothing in common with it. Psychological sovereignty is the ability to say, "I do not know you," to your closest associate, if the biology of your survival demands it. Lesson number 7. Continued. The will to power is the will to loneliness at the summit. 5. Phase. Sensory immersion. The air on the roof smells of ozone and burnt aviation fuel. The city below looks like a giant microchip through which flows of lights run, absolutely indifferent to the drama of one man. Arthur feels the cold of the steel door handle, hard, reliable, understandable. In his ears stands the silence of deep space. He is the only real object in this world of shadows and puppets. Julian, against his background, looks like a blurred spot disappearing in the rays of the cold morning sun. Arthur exits, and the door closes behind him with a heavy, final click, cutting Julian off from reality forever. Conclusion. The sovereignty of the predator. You no longer belong to the crowd. From the moment you realize the mechanisms that govern human behavior, the way back to the cozy cradle of ignorance and moral values is closed to you. You have seen the strings by which social puppets are pulled, and now you face a single choice: to continue twitching in time with another's will, or to take the control into your own hands. The world you knew is nothing more than a thin decoration covering a ruthless theater of biological dominance. We have dissected it chapter by chapter. You have learned to use silence as a noose, weakness as bait, and reality as plasticine. You have realized that isolation is a tool of capture, and your patience is the highest form of aggression. Now you understand. Emotional intelligence in its true cold manifestation is not the ability to sympathize. It is the ability to remain absolutely transparent and cold while others burn in the fire of their own neurochemical reactions. It is the ability to calculate the vector of another's benefit and redirect it to your advantage even before the opponent opens their mouth. Man is a rope, tied between beast and overman, said Nietzsche. By choosing the path of cold psychology, you are taking a step along this rope. Below is an abyss of sentimentality, fear, and dependency. Under your feet is the icy steel of pragmatism. At this height, the air is thin, and loneliness is inevitable. No, it is here, in the thin air of sovereignty, that true power is born. Power over oneself, and therefore over the world. Your feelings are now simply data. Your attachments are strategic alliances. Your life is a chess game where you play for both sides to always guarantee yourself victory. Knowledge of the mechanisms of the psyche is your primary freedom. Subscribe so that we may explore the hidden facets of human behavior together. And be sure to write in the comments which psychological pattern or strategy we shall dissect next time. Let us seek the truth together.